Do you know what separates the women men actively pursue from those who constantly find themselves waiting by their phones, hoping for a response? It's not what most dating advice tells you. It's not about playing hard to get. It's not about following some complicated texting formula. It's not about being mysterious or aloof. It's something much more fundamental, something that most women unknowingly sabotage every single day. If you've ever found yourself staring at your phone, crafting the perfect message to send first, or if you've ever felt the urge to initiate every conversation because silence feels unbearable, what I'm about to share will completely shift how you approach attraction. Because the truth is, there's a specific behavioral pattern that quietly trains men to become passive in pursuit, and it has nothing to do with your worth, your beauty, or how interesting you are. After studying countless dating scenarios and observing what actually makes men become the pursuer versus the pursued, I discovered something that goes against nearly everything you've been taught about modern dating. The women who have men genuinely chasing them, calling them, planning dates, and thinking about them throughout the day are not the ones constantly reaching out first. In fact, they do the exact opposite of what most women believe creates connection. And the contrast is so striking that once you understand it, you'll never approach dating the same way again. You'll finally see why some women effortlessly have men pursuing them while others exhaust themselves trying to keep conversations alive. Here's the first truth that will change everything. Most women accidentally train men to be lazy in relationships by removing all the effort required to maintain connection. Picture this scenario. You meet someone interesting, there's chemistry, maybe even a great first date. But then, instead of allowing natural momentum to build, you immediately step into the role of relationship manager. You text first, you make plans, you check in on his day. You think you're being caring, thoughtful, even proactive. But what message are you actually sending? You're telling him that connection with you requires zero effort on his part. You're showing him that no matter what he does or doesn't do, you'll always be there, always available, always initiating. Let me tell you about Sarah, a successful 32-year-old who came to me frustrated because every guy she dated seemed to lose interest after a few weeks. Sarah was intelligent, attractive, and had a lot to offer, but she made one crucial mistake. The moment she felt a connection with someone, she would take over all communication. She'd text good morning messages, ask about his day, send funny memes, and essentially become his personal entertainment system. What Sarah didn't realize was that she was providing consistent dopamine hits without requiring any investment from him. And when someone gets all the benefits of a relationship without any of the effort, why would they work harder? Here's what happens in a man's mind when you constantly text first. Instead of wondering when he'll hear from you, instead of thinking about what you're doing, instead of planning the next time he'll see you, he becomes passive. He starts expecting your messages. He begins taking your attention for granted. The psychological tension that creates desire simply disappears. But here's the part most women don't understand. When you stop being the initiator, something fascinating happens. Suddenly there's space in the dynamic. There's uncertainty. There's a gap that his mind naturally wants to fill. The question shifts from when will she text me to why hasn't she texted me? And that shift in his mental focus is everything. You see, pursuit is not about playing games or manipulating someone. It's about creating a dynamic where both people have to invest in maintaining connection. It's about allowing him to experience the natural human desire to reach out, to connect, to pursue what feels valuable to him. When you remove all effort from his side of the equation, you remove his opportunity to demonstrate genuine interest. You remove his chance to show up, to prove himself, to feel the satisfaction of winning your attention. And without that investment, without that chase, the connection becomes one-sided. Now, here's the second way to make him chase without texting first. Become genuinely scarce, not artificially unavailable. There's a massive difference between these two approaches, and understanding this distinction will save you from playing exhausting games that ultimately backfire. Artificial unavailability is when you deliberately ignore e-messages, pretend to be busy when you're not, or calculate your response times to appear important. This approach feels manipulative because it is. Genuine scarcity, however, is something entirely different. It's when you're actually living a life so rich and fulfilling that you're naturally not always available. It's when you have passions, friendships, goals, and interests that genuinely occupy your time and energy. Let me share the story of Eleanor, a 29-year-old artist who transformed her dating life by embracing genuine scarcity. Eleanor used to be the type of woman who would rearrange her entire schedule around any man she was interested in. If he wanted to see her, she'd cancel plans with friends. If he texted, she'd respond immediately, no matter what she was doing. But then Eleanor made a decision. She started pursuing a passion she'd neglected: pottery classes on Tuesday evenings, hiking group on weekends, and volunteering at an animal shelter on Saturday mornings. She began building a life that fulfilled her independent of any romantic relationship. The remarkable thing that happened was this: when she started dating Marcus, she wasn't constantly available for last-minute plans because she genuinely had other commitments. When he texted during pottery class, she didn't see his message until later because she was genuinely engaged in something else. When he suggested hanging out on Saturday morning, she had to decline because of her volunteer commitment. Marcus's response was fascinating. Instead of losing interest, he became more invested. He started planning dates in advance to ensure he could see her. He began asking about her pottery classes and showing genuine interest in her hobbies. He started pursuing her with intention because he realized that winning her time actually meant something. You see, when a man has to compete with a rich, full life for your attention, he understands that your time has value. When he realizes that choosing to spend time with him means you're choosing him over other meaningful activities, it elevates his perception of what that choice represents. This principle works because it triggers something fundamental in human psychology. We value what's valuable to others and what requires effort to obtain. When you're genuinely busy building a meaningful life, when you have commitments and passions that matter to you, when your time genuinely is limited, you become someone worth pursuing. The woman who drops everything for a man signals that her life lacks substance without him. The woman who has a rich life that a man has to earn access to signals that she's worth the effort required to win her attention. Here's the third principle that will revolutionize how men respond to you. Stop being his emotional investment banker and become someone worth investing in. Most women unknowingly take on the role of emotional caretaker from the very beginning of a relationship. They ask how his day went. They remember important details about his life. They offer support for his problems, and they essentially become his personal therapy session. While this feels natural and caring, it creates a dangerous dynamic where he receives all the emotional benefits without making any emotional deposits. Think about this for a moment. When you constantly check in on his emotional state, when you remember every detail he shares, when you offer advice for his problems, what's happening? You're doing all the emotional labor while he gets to passively receive care and attention. He never has to wonder how you're doing because you never give him space to ask. Let me tell you about Rachel, a 34-year-old consultant who was dating Jake. Rachel prided herself on being supportive and caring. Every time they talked, she'd ask about his stressful job, remember his family drama, and offer thoughtful advice about his career decisions. She thought this made her valuable, that it showed how much she cared. But something strange happened. The more emotional support Rachel provided, the less Jake seemed to invest in getting to know her. He'd share his problems but rarely ask about hers. He'd accept her advice but never offer support in return. The relationship became entirely one-directional, with Rachel as the giver and Jake as the receiver. Everything changed when Rachel shifted the dynamic. Instead of immediately asking about his day, she started sharing interesting things about her own life. Instead of solving his problems, she'd listen briefly and then redirect the conversation to something she was excited about. Instead of being available for every emotional crisis, she started having her own life experiences that she was processing. The result was remarkable. Jake suddenly started asking questions about her work, her friends, her interests. He began offering support when she mentioned challenges. He started investing emotional energy into understanding and connecting with her rather than simply receiving her care. Here's what's happening psychologically. When you're always giving emotional support, you're training him to see you as a resource rather than a person. You become someone who serves his emotional needs rather than someone whose emotional world he wants to explore and understand. But when you have your own emotional landscape, when you have your own challenges and victories and interests, when you share your own thoughts and feelings, you become someone worth investing in emotionally. You become someone whose inner world is intriguing, someone whose feelings matter, someone whose support and understanding has value because it's not automatically given. This principle works because emotional investment creates attachment. When someone has to work to understand you, when they have to earn your trust with your feelings, when they have to prove themselves worthy of your emotional vulnerability, they become attached to the process and to you. When you make this shift, when you become someone whose emotional world is worth exploring rather than someone whose job it is to explore his, the entire dynamic changes. He starts pursuing connection with you because understanding you becomes something valuable. The fourth way to inspire pursuit without texting first is perhaps the most counterintuitive. Reveal layers slowly instead of sharing everything immediately. Here's what most women do wrong. The moment they feel a connection with someone, they want to fast-track intimacy by sharing their entire life story, their dreams, their fears, their past relationships, and their future hopes. They think that vulnerability equals connection, and that sharing everything will bring them closer together. But what actually happens is the opposite. When you reveal everything about yourself immediately, you remove all mystery. You eliminate the natural human curiosity that drives pursuit. You give him a complete picture without requiring him to invest time and effort into discovering who you are. Let me introduce you to the concept of layered revelation. Imagine you're a fascinating book. Would you rather have someone flip through and read every page in one sitting, or would you prefer they become so captivated by each chapter that they can't wait to discover what comes next? Take Maria, a 28-year-old photographer who used to share her entire romantic history on first dates. She'd talk about her ex-boyfriend, her family dynamics, her career struggles, and her deepest insecurities all in one evening. She thought this openness would create instant connection, but instead, men seemed to lose interest quickly. Maria learned to reveal herself like a flower opening to sunlight, gradually, naturally, and in response to genuine interest and investment from others. On her first date with David, she shared that she was a photographer but didn't immediately launch into her entire artistic journey. She mentioned she loved traveling but didn't list every country she'd visited. What happened next was fascinating. David became genuinely curious. He asked follow-up questions. He wanted to know more about her photography style, about her most memorable travel experience, about what inspired her artistic vision. Instead of receiving her entire story in one download, he had to actively participate in discovering who she was. This approach works because it transforms you from an open book into an intriguing mystery that someone wants to solve. When a man has to ask questions to understand you, when he has to earn the right to know deeper layers of your story, when each conversation reveals something new and interesting, he becomes invested in the discovery process. The woman who is genuinely mysterious isn't withholding information to manipulate. She's simply complex enough that understanding her fully requires time, attention, and genuine investment. And that investment in discovery is what transforms casual interest into genuine pursuit. Now, here's the fifth principle that separates women. Men pursue from women they take for granted. Master the art of response calibration. Not just when to respond, but how to respond in ways that inspire continued effort. This goes far deeper than simple delayed responses or playing hard to get. Most women think that if they just wait a few hours before replying to texts, they'll seem more desirable. But this surface-level strategy misses the psychological mechanics of what actually creates sustained interest and pursuit. Real response calibration is about understanding that every interaction is either training someone to invest more in reaching you or training them that minimal effort will always get maximum access. It's about recognizing that your response patterns teach people how to treat you, how much energy to invest in you, and how valuable your attention actually is. Let me break this down with a practical example. When David texts Jessica, "Hey, what's up?" at 10 p.m., how she responds will determine whether he puts in more effort next time or less. If Jessica immediately responds with enthusiasm, asks him detailed questions about his day, and carries the entire conversation, what has she taught him? That minimal effort from him yields maximum engagement from her. But imagine instead that Jessica responds the next morning with something like, "Good morning, having coffee and heading to yoga. Hope you have a great day." This response is warm but doesn't reward low-effort communication with high-energy engagement. It's pleasant but doesn't provide the dopamine hit he was looking for with his lazy message. What happens next is crucial. If David is genuinely interested in connecting with Jessica, he'll step up his effort. He might text something more substantive, perhaps asking about her yoga practice or sharing something meaningful about his own day. If he's not genuinely interested and was just looking for easy entertainment, he might fade away, which is exactly what should happen. Here's the sophisticated part of response calibration. You match and slightly exceed the energy someone brings to you, but you don't overfill the space they create. When someone sends you a thoughtful message, you respond thoughtfully. When someone asks you a genuine question, you give a genuine answer and ask something back. But when someone sends low-effort communication, you respond pleasantly but briefly. Consider the difference between these responses to, "Hey, beautiful, what are you doing tonight?" Low calibration response, "Nothing much, just at home watching Netflix. What about you? How was your day? Did that meeting go well? Want to come over?" High calibration response, "Hey, having a quiet night in. What's on your mind?" The first response rewards generic attention seeking with detailed information and multiple conversation threads. The second response is warm, but requires him to actually engage with purpose if he wants the conversation to continue. This calibration works because it creates a natural filtering system. Men who are genuinely interested will rise to meet your conversational energy. Men who are just looking for easy entertainment will often fade away because you're not providing entertainment on demand. This principle works because it honors the natural human tendency to value what requires investment while screening out those who aren't willing to make that investment. The final and perhaps most powerful way to inspire pursuit without texting first is this: master the art of purposeful absence, disappearing from his mental space in ways that make him realize what he's missing. This isn't about disappearing because you're playing games or trying to punish someone. This is about living such a full, engaging life that there are natural periods where you're genuinely unavailable, mentally and emotionally absorbed in other pursuits and not thinking about romantic relationships at all. Here's the psychology behind why this works. When someone becomes accustomed to your consistent presence, whether through texts, calls, or constant availability, your value becomes normalized in their mind. But when there's an absence, when they suddenly don't hear from you, when they realize they don't know what you're doing or how you're feeling, something shifts. Let me share the story of Andrea, a successful marketing director who discovered this principle accidentally. Andrea had been casually dating Tom for about a month, and she noticed their communication had become routine and predictable. Then Andrea's company sent her on a business trip to another country for 10 days. She was so busy with meetings and work obligations that she barely thought about Tom. She didn't text him updates, didn't send photos, didn't check in about his life. What happened during those 10 days was revealing. Tom went from someone who responded casually to her messages to someone who was actively wondering what she was doing. He started texting her first, asking about her trip, sharing things about his day, and even making concrete plans for when she returned. Her absence had made him realize that he actually missed her presence in his life. The key to purposeful absence is that it must be genuine. You can't fake being absorbed in other activities. The absence has to come from being genuinely engaged in your own life, your own growth, your own experiences that have nothing to do with him. This works because it breaks the pattern of predictable availability. When someone can't count on your constant presence, when they can't take your attention for granted, you shift from being a sure thing to being someone they have to actively pursue. The woman who can disappear into her own life and emerge more vibrant becomes irresistible to men who recognize quality. Here's what happens when you master these 6 principles. You stop being the woman who anxiously waits for responses and become the woman worth waiting for. You transform from someone who chases connection to someone who inspires others to chase connection with you. But let me be clear about something crucial. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. This is about becoming the most authentic, valuable, interesting version of yourself. Someone whose attention genuinely means something because your time, energy, and emotional investment are precious resources. When you stop texting first and start living these principles, you create space for men to step into their natural role as pursuers. You allow them to experience the satisfaction of winning your attention rather than taking it for granted. You give them the opportunity to prove their genuine interest through their actions rather than their words. The woman who understands these principles doesn't sit by her phone hoping for messages. She's too busy building a life worth pursuing. She doesn't wonder if she's worth chasing because her actions demonstrate her value every single day. She doesn't need to convince anyone of her worth because her worth is evident in how she treats herself and others. These transformations don't happen overnight, but they do happen. And when they do, you discover something beautiful. Men start reaching out first. Men start making plans. Men start investing genuine effort into connecting with you because you have become a woman worth that effort. Stop managing other people's feelings and start honoring your own. Stop being constantly available and start being genuinely valuable. Stop texting first and start being someone worth texting first. The chase begins the moment you stop chasing. Everything changes when you finally realize you're worth the effort